Predatory gambling is America's most neglected major problem.
One fantasy sports contest with my friends for $5, $10 turned by the end into me taking out my phone, hitting the 100 auto spins section, putting it back in my pocket, putting my headphones in, and just listening to the sound coming in to find out how much that bet had won or lost.
The last 10 years of my 20 years of gambling, I just bounced around the country. I lived in 6 different cities, had 12 addresses, 20 jobs.
Clearing a path to a red brick wall. One of the walls in the room was red brick, and literally lowering my head and running as fast as I could, head first into the wall as many times as I could.
This video is brought to you by our generous sponsors, Right Choice Recovery and the Campaign for Fairer Gambling. Check the description of this video for more information about Right Choice's services and for the campaign's mission statement. So with everything you've seen so far, you would probably think that gambling addiction is on the rise. Well, according to the American Gaming Association, that's not the case. They claim that the only thing on the rise is smartphone addiction. Bill Miller, the president of the AGA, just said one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard on a recent 60 Minutes interview about sports betting.
The addiction element of are people addicted to their phones, which is kind of a common phrase. I don't believe that there is an addiction to mobile betting any more than there is an addiction to utilization of your phone for any other reason.
You don't think adding a layer of betting makes the phone more addictive than just tooling around Instagram?
No.
Les Bernal from Stop Predatory Gambling felt much differently though. Here's what he had to say.
That interview is reflective of someone and really a culture of political leadership and investors in this business who are completely out of touch. People who don't gamble themselves and don't have loved ones who've suffered the harm of predatory gambling. Thousands and thousands of people who work in the gambling industry who shield their eyes every day from the harm that their business inflicts on the American public. On our website, we call it the Hypocrite Hall of Fame. It's a picture of quotes from all of these different governors, gambling executives, state legislators, slot machine makers, and so on, who say, this is great for you. There's no harm here being caused, all these forms of extreme gambling we're promoting. But you know what? I don't gamble myself. But it's great for your family, it's great for your community.
Well, if it's so great, then why isn't there a policy that casino owners have to gamble a certain number of days per year? I mean, that would be great for them, right?
That kind of underscores the big con aspect of this. It's an incredibly hypocritical approach. You know, these guys aren't entrepreneurs. These guys are driven by greed. It's all being done in partnership with state governments.
We need to remember that the AGA's goal is to maximize revenues for their clients. Their clients are the casinos, of course. If you imagine an association that was created solely for the purpose of making the rich richer, that's them. Let me share a couple stories that illustrate that this is a public health crisis. The first is my own.
For 6 years, I kept telling myself like, oh, I didn't lose that much, it's not that bad, I'm fine, I can keep going. In reality, what the problem was the entire time was the behavioral change that I experienced from 18 to 24. So when I was 18, I did daily fantasy sports with my friends. I'm from near Philadelphia, so we love our teams down there. We watched every game, whether it was Wednesday night, our family event would be because the Phillies game started at 7, or if it was a Sunday at 1 when the Eagles kicked off, that's when we met up. So when my friends and I found out about fantasy sports, it was a no-brainer. One fantasy sports contest with my friends for $5, $10 turned by the end into me taking out my phone, hitting the 100 auto spins section, putting it back in my pocket, putting my headphones in, and just listening to the sound coming in to find out how much that bet had won or lost. I memorized the soundboard for the slot machines that I would play on the casino app. As soon as the games would end, my friends would go to sleep. I would stay up for the West Coast games. That, about a month later, turned into staying up for the games happening in China and the games happening in Japan. From a fun bet to friends to betting on Chinese basketball, 3 months.
Next, I want to share Adam's story with you.
I grew up in a gambling family, not my immediate family, but there's a lot of gamblers in my mother's side of the family specifically. I grew up playing poker, always being interested in gambling. Scratch tickets were a big thing in my family. I used to love Christmas where I would get to, if I couldn't scratch a ticket, I would want to sit at the kitchen table and watch my Uncle Rick scratch every ticket he got. I kind of isolated and I found some people on my floor that liked to play poker. And for the next 2 years, all I did at school was play poker. 5 years later, doing that combined with, a ton of Keno, just gambling as much as I could. I ended up declaring bankruptcy in my late 20s, I think 27 or 28. So now at this point, I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, and I really thought I was gonna stop, right? Like, who wouldn't stop after declaring bankruptcy? $30,000 in debt from gambling. And for a couple months I did. The paycheck started coming. That itch starts happening. And I'm like, well, okay, lesson learned. I'm not gonna do what I did before. No cash advances, not that I could get a credit card anyways. I'm just gonna play poker. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna work on a budget. So then I just got back into it. And obviously, knowing now, there's no such thing as working on a budget with someone like me. There's no such thing as small bet experimentation. Once I realized that, I said, well, I can't be around here anymore. The jig is up. Like, my friends and family know I declared bankruptcy because of gambling. If I'm gonna keep gambling, I gotta get out of here. So then for the next 10 years, the last 10 years of my 20 years of gambling, I just bounced around the country. I lived in 6 different cities, had 12 addresses, 20 jobs. It was just me not realizing that it wasn't the location, it wasn't the new job, it wasn't the boss, it wasn't, oh, I just need a fresh start. It was that I just had a problem.
Now, there's people who don't think this is a public health crisis at all, not in the slightest, like Bill Pascrell, a former politician who now works with the American gaming industry to push forth legalization efforts.
Between 96 and 99% of all gamblers in all markets, not just in the US, don't have a problem with gambling. They use it as entertainment, as fun. Put a bet on a game, you're gonna be more inclined to watch the game and kibitz and joke. And that's all safe and fine. The Rutgers University study, the UNLV study, which is continuing, and there's a 5-year study paid for by a client of mine at Harvard. You're going to question the credibility of those academic institutions? I don't think so. I think those are good studies paid for by who should pay for them? The industry.
Bill works for the gambling industry, so it wouldn't shock me if the research that they put out failed to be harsh on the gambling industry. In fact, it's in the best interest of their clients that it makes them look good. So what? Who cares if gambling addiction is on the rise, right? I mean, it's not like it's drug addiction. That's actually the issue. Gambling addiction is like drug addiction in certain ways. And if things don't change, gambling addiction might actually become the next opioid epidemic. If you remember our conversation from episode 1, we spoke with Dr. Ken Martz about dopamine and how it changes your brain as a gambling addict.
When I get a little hit of dopamine, it feels good. And so I want a little more of that. And so I start to crave a little bit more. And that's the simplest solution because that then also becomes a withdrawal effect of.
Dopamine is the same chemical that gets released in your brain when you do drugs, like heroin. But we don't see mass coverage on the news about gambling addiction the way we do about opioids. Maybe we're just early. In fact, we're so early that right now our news coverage is filled with ads telling you to sign up for casinos and bet your money away. Imagine seeing an ad for cocaine on TV. That's what I see every single day with gambling ads.
Once the drowsiness of a couple beers sets in, you simply take a little bump and let the medication do its thing.
So what's the difference between the two? Drug dealers aren't allowed to push their product to millions of Americans every single day. But gambling companies get away with it because they're partnered with states. I mean, who's gonna tell them not to do it? The states are making money just like they are. Another aspect of gambling addiction is that it has the highest rate of suicidality of any addiction. 1 in 5 gambling addicts will attempt to take their own life as a direct result of their gambling addiction. Imagine being in a room with your 4 friends, knowing that when you leave them, you would never see one of them again. That's slowly becoming the reality for too many people. And the scariest part of it is, you would have no idea that they were struggling until after it was done, because gambling is the hidden addiction.
I had four attempts. 2 of them were with pills. One was an antidepressant, one was a back pain medication that I took the whole bottle on each. One was me in a room while I was in the military, waiting to get into trouble and to get disciplined for the gambling I did, clearing a path to a red brick wall. One of the walls in the room was red brick, and literally lowering my head and running as fast as I could head first into the wall as many times as I could. I got hooked on slot machines in Korea because that's what was in the rooms. And when I came back to the States, of course, because that's what I got hooked on, that's what I sought out. With brick and mortar, with casino gambling, you have to physically go to that casino in order to do it. So I wasn't there all the time. I didn't gamble 24/7. Although I can tell you, coming from Pennsylvania, we had a robust lottery. When I couldn't make it to the gambling, I would do a lot of scratch-off lottery tickets. But when I went, pretty much everything that I had in that moment, I would lose. So what I would do is I'd take a certain amount of money to the casino. I'd say, I'm only going to spend 300 bucks. I'd pull 300 out of the ATM. I'd drive down there. When the 300 was gone, of course, I'm going back to the ATM in the casino to tap out more money at extremely high rates until I could not tap any more money out. That's different from today in that if you're sitting on your mobile device, it's so much easier just to deposit a chunk of money. I had to physically go and take out more money, and it was always so embarrassing to stand in that ATM line because I knew at least somebody knew exactly what I was doing. So it's very different that way in that it's tactile. You know, you have to drive there to get there. You're among a bunch of other people who are doing exactly the same thing. So from that perspective, it was pretty easy to hide.
Okay, let's say for some reason you still don't care. You're saying, all right, well, I'm not addicted to gambling. I don't know anyone that is. It's their choice. Why should I tell them what to do with their money, what to do with their time? That's not the argument that we're making here. Gambling addiction affects you as well, and it affects your wallet, even if you've never gambled before in your life.
Taxpayers are paying the price, not just by contributing their hard-earned dollars to gamble, to the tune of $350 million a year in one state in social economic harms, welfare, homelessness, divorce, medical needs. Everybody has to pay the cost to ensure that the people of the state are taken care of. $350 million a year. That's not even accounting for the social harms from all the gambling combined, which is over $700 million a year.
A gambling addiction erodes trust between the gambler and their loved ones, as there's constant lies, hiding the gambling, manipulating to get money. Some people are out there lying to their kids about why they can't afford Christmas gifts this year. Some kids are asking their mom, why didn't dad come home last night? And it's because he was at the casino. The probability of a problem gambler's relationship ending in a divorce is 40%. That number goes up to 53.5% if they're pathological gamblers. And while all of that's playing out, the problem gambler could be draining the savings of their family, fueling the addiction desperately to get that next hit. Because we have the thought, I'll quit after I get that big win. There's so much pain. It's not just partners either. It's parents. It's your kids that could be struggling. It could be your brother. Like in the case of Ronda, where she tragically lost her brother Bobby to a gambling addiction.
I am one of 5 kids in our family, and I'm the youngest. My brother Bobby is just a year older than I am. We grew up together. We went to school in the same class all the way through elementary school, all the way through high school. He moved to Portland probably like in 1988. He moved to Portland, started a job there working in a steel mill. He got off work at 1 o'clock in the morning. So when gambling started with scratch tickets and Keno, he would do that a little bit to unwind. But in 1992, video poker came in and he started going to a bowling alley to unwind before work, and he started playing more than he should have and became addicted to that. He shared very little with us about the extent of his gambling, but we did know that he was coming to us to borrow money, of course lying to us and telling us it was for gas or food or whatever. But when we caught on that each of us were being asked for $20, we kind of realized what was going on. We questioned him about it. He talked to me about it. And he said, it's not, I just go just to go. It's not really fun. It's not something I enjoy. It's just something I do. So yes, we did know that he was gambling. We did not know at that time that it was considered an addiction. We just thought he had a lack of impulse control. When Bobby, my mom had also told the counselor that Bobby was suicidal and that he had contemplated even taking out people at work because he was so angry of not getting that promotion. So his emotions were all over the place. And so she gave him Prozac and never monitored it. And so if there's anything else that goes along with this, talking to the counselors and talking to people, it is so important that those meds are monitored. We found bottles and bottles of meds at his house that he did not take, that he didn't like the way they made him feel. I was newly married and had a young family. We were gonna surprise Bobby at his company picnic. So we were getting ready, hurry in the morning just so that we could get up there. We were all super excited to get up and surprise him at his picnic. And the phone rang. The phone call was from my brother EJ, who lived in Portland as well, near my parents. And I answered the phone and he just said, I need to talk to Darren, who's my husband. I knew at that moment that Bobby was gone. And I don't know why I knew that, because I didn't know Bobby was suicidal. My mom's the only one who knew that in the beginning. I don't remember much after that. We went to my sister's house. I have a sister and brother who live here in Eugene as well. And we all kind of carpooled up to my parents' house together. Seeing my parents in their driveway, they were just standing there waiting for us. And just seeing them in the driveway is something I'll never forget. The look on their faces. My dad actually found Bobby with my two nephews. They were teenagers and they were spending a couple weeks in Portland. And they rode their bikes to his house because he hadn't answered his phone. That's how he was found. We had one reporter come out to our Problem Gambling Awareness Day. We ended up doing it in my sister's driveway. We brought my parents' RV down. We made big signs. We wrote on balloons. Like, we just did it the best we could. And we had one reporter, and he said, just to figure out what you guys are doing. Like, none of this makes sense to me. This is kind of a ridiculous thing. But the curiosity got me. I'm here. Like, what is this about? Even in my church that I had been a part of for years, they just said, let's just hope he asked God into his heart before he did it, because he's going to hell. It's a sin. That was the comment. Like, nobody wanted to hear that side of it. And I just felt so strongly that we couldn't be the only ones who needed this information. We got a call from a TV news station in Seattle. They took us there on the train and had us tell our story. People kept asking for it, just not local people. And so we did end up just continuing to share it. And the more I shared it, the more I learned that people needed to hear it. I've got hundreds and hundreds of calls from people across the United States saying, I just need someone who will listen. I just need someone who might understand what I'm going through. Will you please talk to my spouse? They don't think this is real. Like, so many times. And I'm passionate about this, that, Bobby's death wasn't in vain. There's a reason I'm the one that took this on, that he passed and I'm the one who took this on.
The elephant in the room question here is, can the gambling industry survive without gambling addiction? If the answer is yes, then there's some positive changes that can be made. But if the answer is no, there's an entire industry that relies on the pain and suffering of the users of its product to survive. And since 86% of casino revenues come from 5% of the players, it doesn't look promising. But here's what Les had to say about it.
Predatory gambling is America's most neglected major problem. Yes, it's a highly addictive product, and millions of Americans are suffering from it. You, the non-gambler, you're paying higher social costs, you're paying higher taxes for this. More than $1 trillion of wealth that's gonna be lost by the American people over the next 5 years. Larger that portion of that money is coming from citizens who are addicted, but you, the non-gambler, you're having a lower standard of living because of that. Like, that $1 trillion of wealth, if it was spent on the local economy in a meaningful way, there's a multiplier impact of that. Yes, this is a business based on addiction, but the reason why commercialized gambling has been illegal, and is still illegal, it's not illegal because it's addictive. It's illegal because it's a form of consumer financial fraud in the family of price gouging and false advertising. It's based on identifying people who could be addicts, cultivating these citizens who are being turned into addicts, and then once you're clearly identified as an addicted gambler, just to take you for all you're worth. They're trying to get you to play to extinction until all of your money is gone. How do you help those people who are being harmed the most? Prevention, education, that's not gonna help those people. What's gonna help them is holding these companies legally liable, restricting advertising and marketing, cutting the amount of gambling losses that American citizens are suffering. Stop selling $100 scratch-off tickets in low-income neighborhoods to people who make $7.25 an hour like they do in Texas. We're pushing these extreme forms of gambling, all being done under this idea that somehow a little prevention education is going to stop all that. It's just, again, it's window dressing. It's irrelevant. It's part of this idea that it gives the appearance that something's being done, but the reality is it's completely ineffective.
In the next episode, we're going to be bringing this to life. We're going to be sharing stories of teens, women, men, and families that have been impacted by gambling addiction directly. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss it.
It gradually built up.
over time. The first big loss I had out of my bank account was $100. The next week, it was like $150, then $200, and it follows. It turned into my whole paycheck being gone.
So I started gambling when I was 13 years old, and I was actually in my first Gamblers Anonymous meeting by the time I was 16.
I was still thinking about all the money I lost. I gambled all of that money, plus whatever else I could get out of my checking account. I just remember for the first time, really, the thoughts of self-harm were so strong. Like, they were so strong.
And if the parents aren't aware and don't know what to look for, then the kids are just gonna keep going until, who knows what happens.